Welcome once again to Commander by Danon. Today we continue our series building decks around the new commanders from Warhammer 40k. I promised in my last video that this would be a budget deck, and I kept it under $100. Sort of. I also said I wasn't planning on doing any deck upgrades, but this wound up being one. Sort of. Our commander this time is Magus, Lucea, Kane, and you'll want to pick up a copy of Tyranid Swarm to build this deck. Mostly because the deck I'll be presenting today uses about half the cards from that precon. Before we get started, I'd like to quickly ask you to like and subscribe. I've been very happy with the growth this channel has had so far, and I'm excited to see where we're going. If you're looking for ways to support the channel directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/Danon. One of the tiers is specifically set up for Commander. For only $25, I will build you a custom Commander deck based around your specifications, and even do a deck video on it. With that out of the way, let's get into the video. Magus Lucea Kane is a 4-mana 1/1 legendary human Tyranid wizard. She also has 2 abilities, 1 triggered and 1 activated. Her first ability triggers at the beginning of combat on our turn and lets us put a +1/+1 counter on a creature we control. We can also tap her to add 2 colorless mana. If we do so, when we next cast a spell with X in its mana cost, or activate an ability with X in its activation cost this turn, we copy that spell or ability. Reminder, a copy of a permanent spell becomes a token. So what does this mean? This means that the first X spell we cast each turn gets doubled, assuming we're activating Magus Lucea Kane. So we want a lot of instants and sorceries with X in their casting cost. But we can also double creatures with X in their casting cost. And what creatures have X in their casting cost? Tyranids and Hydras. Okay, so for this deck, I used the Tyranid Swarm precon as a starting point and added a bunch of Hydras. All told, the deck is about half new, with the new cards coming to only about $40. So if you're able to pick up the pre-constructed deck for $60, then the rest of the cards for $40, you can build this deck for under $100. It'll be a bit more than that if you order the cards individually. So yes, we are a budget deck, but not exactly. And we're also a precon upgrade. But we're not just adding 3 or 4 cards. We're adding about 40. So rather than doing a video saying swap this card with that card, I'm just going to go over the entire deck list. But before we get to our deck list, we should keep in mind our checklist. 50 mana sources, usually split between 37 lands and 13 pieces of ramp. 10 pieces of card advantage. 8 to 10 pieces of spot removal. 2 to 3 board wipes. 2 pieces of graveyard hate. 1 sudden I win card. For lands, we're running Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, Frontier Bivouac, Temple of Mystery, Temple of Epiphany, Temple of Abandon, Simic Guildgate, Izzet Guildgate, Gruul Guildgate, Cinderglade, Tangled Islet, Molten Tributary, Wooded Ridgeline, Rimewood Falls, Volatile Fjord, Ash Barrens, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, 10 forests, 5 islands, and 4 mountains. To fetch additional lands, we're running Farseek, Rampant Growth, Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Circuitous Route, and Ranger's Path. Biophagus as a mana dork, Nexos to help our lands generate more mana, Soul Ring, and Arcane Signet as mana rocks, Shadow in the Warp as a cost reducer, and New Horizons, and Overgrowth to help with mana acceleration. To go with our X-Spell theme, we're running Pull from Tomorrow, Hydroid Crisis, Mind Spring, Diviner's Portent, and Expansion Explosion. We've also got Inspiring Call, and Bred for the Hunt as cards that work very well with our creatures, as well as Explore, Eureka Moment, and Urban Evolution. For spot removal, we're running Hull Breach, Steelbane Hydra, By Force, Abrade, and Return to Nature. We've also got Malanthrope, and Scavenging Ooze for Graveyard Hate, and Negate as our single counterspell. We've got Aetherize and Starstorm for board wipes. I didn't want to run a ton because we are a creature-heavy deck, but having a couple as backup is usually a smart decision. We've got a ton of creatures in the deck with variable casting cost. To start, we're running Stonecoil Serpent, Hormagaunt Horde, Hungering Hydra, Mistcutter Hydra, Ochre Jelly, Spirocyst, Termagant Swarm, Aberrant, Apocalypse Hydra, Hooded Hydra, Moloch, Neverwinter Hydra, Nimbus Swimmer, Ravener, Tervigion, Zoanthrope, Exocrine, Tyrant Guard, Altered Ego, and Broodlord. Finally, a few support cards to help make our giant creatures even bigger. We're running Hardened Scales, Halana and Elena Partners, Tanazir Quandrix, The First Tyrannic War, Death's Presence, and Prime Speaker Zagana. Now, let's take a look at our deck and compare it to our checklist. 50 mana sources split between 37 lands and 13 pieces of ramp, right on target. 10 pieces of card advantage, 8 pieces of interaction, 2 board wipes, 3 pieces of graveyard hate, no sudden I win cards, but lots of ways to make giant creatures and smash our opponents in the face. And that's what the point of this deck is. We want to use our commander to double up our creature generation, use our mana ramp to make sure the creatures are as big as possible, and beat our opponents to death the old-fashioned way. I also wanted to make sure that we had a few X-Spell draw cards in our deck, because copying those is always fun. I know I could have gone with a Spellslinger theme with this commander, but I thought that Hydras and Tyranids would be more fun. Now, as far as non-budget upgrades are concerned, obviously we should start with mana. Swap the Temples for Shocks, the Ash Barrens for the Triome, and the Guild Gates for fetches. Also, when you cut the Guild Gates, be sure to swap Circuitous Root for Skyshroud Claim. I really wanted to include some bigger Hydras like Primordial Hydra, Lifeblood Hydra, and the new Shivan Devastator, but they were all out of budget. I also think Ancient Bronze Dragon would be a great fit in this deck. Another doubler like Unbound Flourishing, or even Vorinclex Monstrous Raider would have been great, but both of those cards are way out of budget. Finally, Treasure Vault works amazingly well with our commander. To help you out, gentle viewer, I've included 2 links below. One is to the finalized deck list, and the other is to a shopping list of sorts. If you want to build this deck exactly as you see in the video, the cheapest way for you to do so is to buy a copy of Tyranid Swarm, pull out all the cards that don't match the theme, and then add the 40 or so cards I mentioned in this video. Now, I always recommend that people buy sealed product from their local game store, but that's not always possible. So for those who cannot, I've included a link to Amazon where you can buy a copy of the deck. How are you building Magus, Lucea, Kane? Are you leaning more towards Spellslinger? What's your budget? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, a huge shout out to my editor Cute Stuff. I couldn't make these videos without her. If you'd like to hire her to edit your own videos, there's a link to her Fiverr page below. I also wanted to give a quick shout out to all of my patrons: Jiraiya, Waffles, Muffins, Casey, Danny, Nick, Marcus, Black Dragon, Phoenix of Ice, and Daniel. You guys are awesome. I post new Commander Deck videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or you can click here to watch additional videos. Also, if you're a fan of anime and manga like I am, feel free to check out my other channel, Musings by Danon. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again next time on Commander by Danon.